Congratulations to the class of 2019 and welcome to Howard. You're about to enter a truly magical place. My name is Osceola Ulumwengu, and by the time you see this video, I will have completed my 4 years at Howard as an Africana Studies major and a philosophy minor, hailing from East Palo Alto, California. I just wanted to impart you with some words of wisdom. This is a speech that I've written in reflection after completing my 4 years at Howard, and I hope it resonates with you. I can still vividly remember my first day on Howard's campus. Founders Library seemed to tower over me as I sat fraught with concern that I would never find my way here. Howard was my dream school, but I had a great deal of trouble adjusting to my new environment. As the year progressed, I began to gain a sizable collection of memories that held important insights. I had deeply introspective conversations about authenticity over dry cornbread and watery macaroni and cheese. I was told that the South made the best soul food and that I made the best me. This wisdom from upperclassmen reminded me to stay true to self and resist the urge to bow under peer pressure. I wondered openly about my future and direction in life as I stood huddled with friends outside of nightclubs that weren't actually free before 12. At events like the Drew Hall Cipher, I met poets and artists who were attempting to use their talents to answer the many existential questions that plague black youth. I learned the virtues of entrepreneurship and a tireless work ethic from classmates who seemed to be club promoters, videographers, and freelance journalists, all while carrying a full course load. I was in classes with professors who pushed me to think and grow intellectually. Their expectations of me not be clouded by racist assumptions about my capabilities or potential. I began to build connections with others who helped me realize that experiences, triumphs, and pains were shared ones. I was now part of a community. The solvency of this community would be repeatedly tested during my time at Howard. Tragic events such as the execution of Troy Davis and the murders of Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and Freddie Gray demonstrated the depth of our bond. Students filled the streets, marching to the White House in righteous indignation. They offered themselves as the moral consciousness of a nation that refused to be self-critical in such clear moments of injustice. My peers comforted and strengthened one another in times of despair. I came to realize that we weren't simply fighting to redress individual instances of injustice. We were fighting for the sanctity of our larger community. Our efforts to reach out demonstrated an understanding that our education served a much larger purpose. Our education was a means by which we would fight for our freedom. This profound revelation led me to reflect on the criticisms that many of us faced before deciding to attend Howard. We were told that our beloved institution was outdated, out of touch with the real world, and lacking in diversity. In some senses, the naysayers were right. We were not trying to replicate a quote-unquote real world, where black intellect and humanity was denigrated or destroyed. A real world where morality gave way to the draw of fame and riches. No, we were attempting to envision an ideal world which rotated on the dual axes of truth and service. Those who charged that Howard lacked diversity made a foolhardy admission of their own ignorance, for they could not see the complexity that exists within blackness. They couldn't recognize the intricacy of an aso ebi, a kente cloth, or the Jamaican bandana. They couldn't get hyphy, slow wine, or catch the rhythm of the samba. They couldn't account for the 55 independent African nations, multitude of Latin American countries, chain of Caribbean islands, and small black communities in Iowa and Oklahoma which might have a representative on the yard during any given weekday. My Howard family was a strong and diverse one, deeply entrenched in the intertwined traditions of community, education, and liberation. You see, Howard is not the sole proprietor of these rich traditions as they flow like a bubbling river through our vibrant history as African-descended people. In Africa, elaborate rites of passage instructed young boys and girls on how to be upstanding members of a larger community. Central to these practices was the understanding that youth will one day serve as the peacekeepers, intellectuals, and workers of society. Institutions like the great University of Timbuktu in Mali served as hubs of community, thought, and contemplation. The surging river of genius was dispersed as rivulets by its carriers in the New World. Under the sweltering heat of oppression, the tradition of education was colored with a new sense of urgency. An urgency that irrevocably linked education with efforts for liberation and freedom. Enslaved African people learned how to cook high delicacies from the table scraps given them, nourishing bodies that ached under the strain of forced labor. They mastered the complexities of astronomy and cosmology so that they could follow the North Star to freedom. They codified entirely new languages, which paid reverence to past African tongues, but concealed plans for resistance in their verbiage. In 1867, this tradition of liberatory education began to seep into the foundation and nourish the roots of our fledgling university. It began with the likes of Douglass, who championed the emancipation of our enslaved ancestors. It brought us Zora Neale Hurston and Elaine Locke, who demonstrated the complexity and vivacity of black life through their art and meditations. It blessed us with Gloria Richardson, Kwame Ture, and the countless other freedom fighters who valiantly offered their lives so that we may taste freedom. It attracted thinkers, theorists, and revolutionaries like Chedi Dashan and Solomon Motswairu, who were struggling against the grips of colonial domination. This river of tradition is ever flowing, and we cannot stand idly by on the banks of passivity while the enemies of humanity attempt to dam it. Frantz Fanon noted that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill or betray it. Our mission as Howard graduates is a unique one. We face many pertinent challenges as a community. We are entering a world in which black life is given little value. Draconian and racially biased policies lead to the imprisonment of large numbers of our youth, much of our hope and potential being incarcerated with them. Grade schools face closures and restructuring around the nation, leaving many of our children ill-prepared to meet the demands of a society that expects nothing of them but failure. Poverty ravages our people, plucking innovative dreams and visions from their heads and replacing them with the pangs of needs unmet. Corrupt police and vigilantes kill us with impunity under the guise of law and order. These are simply a sampling of the issues that we will be tasked with addressing as a graduating class. Luckily, this gymnasium is filled with some of the greatest minds of our generation. We have future doctors, attorneys, world-renowned artists, and laureates in our midst. Although our methods of responding and visions of the future will undoubtedly differ, one thing is clear. Addressing systemic oppression will require the kind of sustained resistance that only a strong and coherent community can provide. Individuals cannot win this fight. Egos cannot liberate us. While anger is a justifiable and needed emotion, a much more sustainable principle must animate our actions. A principle that will continue to strengthen our community and allow us to pass on the traditions we've been given here at Howard. That principle is love. Radical love for our various cultures which have sustained us under some of the most vigorous and pointed forms of defilement in human history. Love for ourselves that allows us to recognize the extreme toll that societal abuse takes on our mental health and well-being. Love that leads us to take the steps to heal and cope through positive means. We need love that allows us to respect and empower the most vulnerable members of our community. Love that recognizes and values the innumerable contributions that women have and are making in our efforts to attain freedom. Love that compels us to collectively organize and build despite our differences. Love that bestows us with the confidence to support our own businesses and institutions as they give us the strength and economic clout to make change. Love that allows us to hold these same institutions accountable when they place the bottom line above the well-being of our community. A love that leads us to use all that we have learned here at Howard to advocate for our people. Let us continue Howard's tradition of excellence by taking with us deep memories of those who have come before. Let us continue preserving it for tomorrow and for the infinity of days after that. We are the Howard of the past, the present, and the future. Our families, our community, our nation awaits. Let us deliver.